saw the Michael Jackson movie. And just know that I saw Michael Jackson. And unlike that Netflix thing they did the other year that kind of made you cringe, uncomfortable about who Michael was and had us questioning his legacy. Mm-mm. Mm-mm. This movie was everything, and we're about to get into it, people. But I just came in because lives are not my thing, but I wanted to talk about this Michael Jackson movie because it literally gave me chills. And when I tell you I never looked away, we need to talk. Michael Jackson's family, sort of, or most of them, have all given their blessings. I think Janet may be not to this new Michael Jackson movie. His nephew, who looks so amazingly close, the resemblance of him to Mike is, I'm telling you, it's uncanny. And I'm sure makeup did some things for him, but it took me literally 2 minutes to get into him and engross into him being Michael. So let me start from the beginning. So I marked my calendar because I knew the Michael Jackson movie was coming. So myself and I made a date with one of my friends, and myself and my friend, my girlfriend, we booked a time to go to the matinee because we didn't want to be like, I didn't want my movie interrupted by people dancing. I just wanted to engross myself in this movie. Fast forward, just know that everybody thinks they know about Michael Jackson. But after watching this movie, I'm telling you right now, it showed me some things that I didn't know. It surprisingly showed me some things that I did that I was just really happy to see unfold and like the backstory on it. There was nothing disparaging about this movie for Michael, and that was good for me. And let's get into it. So, first, we got to the movie, and yes, this is, y'all got to remember, this is Mississippi, and you can't make some of this stuff up. So, when we got to the movies, we had prepaid for our seats, and the attendant who took our money said right off the bat, we have no water. There's no water in the house. So if you're going to need to go to the bathroom, you shouldn't come in. Now that I know. And we didn't understand that that meant you couldn't buy soda either. So after I purchased popcorn, they were gracious enough to let me go back to my car and get my Stanley and brace myself for the movie. So anyway, let's go over the movie. Let's start with the Graham King, the producer of this movie. I wasn't aware, not really a big movie buff. I love documentaries and I like romantic comedies. So I wasn't aware of any of his work, but apparently he produced movies like The Rhapsody, Bohemian something. I knew nothing of these movies. But at the end of this movie, I realized that his specialty must be bringing people's life complementary to who their good side, bringing that to the big screen. Now, I'm gonna name a few of the people that were in the movie that I was just taken aback about this acting, even though it was a small documentary. I mean, I really was taken in, and maybe because so many of us are attached to the Jackson story and we think we know so much, it wasn't hard for me to believe any of these actors and actresses. So, Jaafar Jackson, we're going to get into him. He played Michael. And then Coleman Domingo played Joe. That had to be the best depiction of Joe Jackson I've ever seen. Then there was Nia Long, and let's just say she played Catherine. And although I had seen other people play Catherine, I really felt like she embodied what in my mind I thought Catherine Jackson was like. Like I felt like Catherine was this meek person, but the side of me, the side of Catherine that she displayed helped me see all of Catherine's vulnerabilities as what emotional vulnerabilities, as well as just kind of who she was like in her illness and just her relationship with her kids. Lorenz Tate. Lord, all he's got to do is step on the screen and we got something with Lorenz, right? So I wish we could have probably seen more of Lorenz, but he was Barry Gordy. There was Miles Teller, who was John Bronca, whom I was very impressed with. There was Laura Harrier, Suzanne DePassy. There wasn't a very big role for her, but she was there. Kat Graham was Diana Ross. Not a very big role, but she was there. And then Jessica Sully was Latoya Jackson. The last four probably had 4 lines in the whole movie. And honestly, this really felt more like a musical than anything for me. But it depicted all of the things I wanted to remember and wanted to see on a big screen about Michael. Because I can go 100 different places to see things that actually disparaged his name and his likeness. I don't need to see that in my Michael movie. I felt like the movie really leaned into Michael as a person, like how soft he really was, how he developed this relationship and this kid like personality and kind of never maturing. And you sort of had this feeling that he never did until you actually saw the movie, because you realize that Michael was not only a musical genius, he was an entrepreneur. He was an expert in branding himself. He knew who he was. The one thing that I noticed was that, and I don't know if this was intentional, but it felt like he was an expert at calculating all of his moves. That may have been part of the perfectionist in him, but that's what it felt like to me. I felt like this movie honored Michael's past and embraced like all of the present day accomplishments that we can honor and respect him for. Notwithstanding the fact that his brothers were a large part of his story. He wasn't just an artist, he wasn't just a musical genius, he was an expert in branding himself. He controlled his narrative. There were moments when you felt like he learned how to play off of all Joe's weaknesses. Joe had everybody in that family terrified. It's weird how he kept everybody in order without touching them after they grew up. But it felt like there was a lot of abuse in that family for many, many years. And even after a lot of these kids were adults, I think Joe felt like he could still like abuse them. And the movie didn't say it, but I felt like it insinuated that he thought he could. But it was really nice that they didn't really just stick around and put a lot of effort and emphasis on Joe, Catherine, any of the brothers or sisters. And of course, it was like Janet wasn't even their sister. She was missing from the whole movie. But it was nice that they used all of their moments just to emphasize the Michael Jackson we know, and kind of how a lot of his masterpieces came to fruition. They let us in on like the thoughts and the mastermind behind a lot of his creations. And to me, that's an important part to me of music. I love to know what the thought process was about why you named a song a thing, and how you decided to take up this like journey or conversation. And that was one of the most interesting for me. But when I tell you Jaafar Jackson, this boy, they said he studied for like 2 years. They said he studied dancing, he studied the mannerisms, and they even did like an open casting call to make sure that Jaafar, Jaafar, was the ideal candidate to do this movie for Mike. So they did an open casting call to see, and they still decided that Jaafar was probably the closest thing to making this thing come alive on the screen. Mostly probably because his his likeness to what Michael looked like was impeccable, especially after hair and makeup. And he had studied it to a T. He was able to nail that character. I see why his family was proud. But I mean, there was a part in the movie. It started out like early in their Indiana days, and we all know the stories. And we'd heard about the abuse, but it broke my heart to figure out that Mike was getting abused too. He was a little kid. Like this guy was taking it to him because he wanted to be a kid, and his dad couldn't see past Gary and Deanna. Now, in some respects, you could say good work ethics is what made people like greats like Michael Jackson and Beyonce like always just powering in on rehearsals and perfection. But we never consider how much these people give up to be who they are, because Michael gave up a whole childhood. And you could see in the movie as they progressed through his life how they kind of honed in on him trying to make friends. And what he ended up doing was making friends with inanimate objects and animals. And I'm not gonna lie, I had imaginary friends when I was little, but Mike never grew out of that because all of his brothers were considerably older than him. And even for 5 years as a kid, that's a lot of light years between a teenager and a young kid. So he befriended these animals, and they obliged him because it pacified him, and then they could convince him to get his work done. But that work ethic started when he was a kid. What I never really understood or got from the movie was how Mike really came to the conclusion that he wanted to be by himself and not with his brothers. I don't know if it was because maybe Jermaine had already pivoted, because they didn't talk a lot about that part. But I'm thinking as I was growing up that probably by then Jermaine had already gone over to Barry Gordy's record label because he had married Barry Gordy's daughter. But maybe he was just sick of Joe, and anything that could distance him from Joe, he would do. So seeing this acted out on screen, though, it really brought you in to what the making of a superstar was like. I'm wondering if you could even make a superstar like that today without trauma. Because you're talking about a kid who loses their entire childhood. So the trauma involved, when I think of people or artists that are just as big as Michael who have achieved as much, I think of people like Taylor Swift, Beyonce, and I know it always appeared that they wanted to do it, especially B, man. But you never consider what they give up to be where they are and who they are. So, and people are always talking about how Joe may have his relationship with these kids, but seeing it played out, man, it just broke your heart. There was a time in the movie, one of the times where he took Michael into the room and closed the door with his belt, that I really teared up And that's how emotional you get watching this movie. But as Michael grew up, some of that stuff that his dad Joe had beat into him, basically, he carried with him through like a lot of his trauma, like the fact that he became a perfectionist. That's because Joe made him do it 100 times. Like there was this one scene where they had been out in a club, yeah, a club, all night singing, and they had gotten all kind of tips, and people were saying how great they were. And when they got home, Joe was like, "No, y'all can't go to bed." And they had school in the morning. It was like midnight or 1. And Michael spoke up, and when he did, Joe was like, "Are you talking to me?" He literally beat this kid. He literally beat this kid because he wanted to go to bed. Like, how do you, like, where they do that at? I think there was a time in life, though, that people thought beating their kids was the right thing to do. And if I were totally honest, anybody in their probably 40s, 50s, and 60s got a whipping or whooping that was characterized as a whipping, but it was probably a low-key beatdown. I can remember the last time I did it to my son, and he was probably 10 because I saw my dad do it, and I thought that was the way that you know, corrected children. But I can also remember, though, that my son was a lot bigger than me at 13, 10 or so. And he did one of these numbers, and my dad was like, "You can't be hitting those kids." Thank the Lord, because the trauma that some of us endured, or some people endure, because um, those cultural cycles of whipping a child and the Bible being taken out of context, like beat a kid until he submits or whatever, those rituals, thank God some of them are dying out. And I'm I'm ashamed that I lived it, and and I watched my father do it to myself and my siblings. And so it's not really unlike what Michael endured and his family. But thank the Lord I wasn't getting beaten all night before I went to school. But a lot of this trauma played into Michael being a perfectionist. And that perfectionist is what got us Thriller, because he would the movie depicted that he would just do it over and over until it felt right. And so a lot of it just kind of reminds you that some people were born to do a thing. Michael was born to be the king of pop. And before him, I'm assuming it may have been Elvis Presley, but there has been none since him that had, to me, there's plenty who've come close. And y'all drop in the chat if y'all think there's any that's come close to meeting the standard of Michael Jackson as the king of pop. Now, Chris Brown is a great dancer. He's an awesome singer, but his charisma and impact is a little different from Michael, because Michael touched generations. And in those days, also, your personal persona was governed a little bit better. And so we didn't get to see like all of your mess being played out on TV. And by the time we did, it was kind of the end of Michael's life. And it did kind of affect his legacy in a way. Usher is close. Usher has the moves, but Usher doesn't have the catalog. Chris Brown has a decent catalog, but most of his catalog lives in R&B. It didn't surpass R&B in a way that Michael's transcended into worldly um, love and appreciation. And so, in that sense, I think there has been nobody to date that has overcome or surpassed Michael Jackson's stardom. Now, I know there's always talk that Drake says he's got one more song and he'll be at Michael Jackson status, but poor thing, he's delusional. Like, he's not as talented. Michael is a triple quadruple threat. Michael can dance, he can sing, he writes a lot of his own music. He's a visionary. He touched the world, and he had years years of catalog. And not only that, he was a good steward of money. Like when you read about Michael's catalog, it doesn't just include his music. He bought the Beatles catalog, which was a lot of UMG's contention with him. Like he owned catalogs of music that was bringing in so much money that it was annoying big wheels in the music industry. So he was not just a visionary, he was a good steward of money. He was a dancer, singer, performer. So I don't think anybody has peaked at Michael Jackson's stardom and can ever contend with him even until this day, to rival him as the king of rock. Excuse me, the king of pop. And so, I mean, now his affinity for kids, they did try to play down his affinity for kids, but they also gave you some background into what started and what kind of perpetuated this need to be kid-like. Not only did he not have a childhood and he was up dancing all night instead of school, but he also wasn't allowed to go to the playground and play. His brothers were his only friends. And in this way, he missed out on that childhood. So anytime he'd see a kid or a kid in need, I'm feeling like the movie translated for me that there was some internal conflict that he was having because he felt for all the children who were sick or alone, or if it looked like in any way they were lonely, he naturally gravitated to them. And that explains too a lot of his affinity for children. Now, does that explain any of the odd behavior? Probably not to us, but we're not Michael. Like we didn't live in a box all of our lives. Like there were times in the world where we would travel to meet family and we would all bed down in the same bed. Now, howbeit we were relatives, we weren't strangers, but yeah, my sisters and I slept in the same bed together in a twin size bed, three of us. It was 10 kids with a 3-bedroom house, 5 boys and 5 girls. 3 of us slept in a twin bed, 2 at the top and 1 at the bottom. So it wasn't unreasonable to know that people slept together in bed. So I'm not getting into all of that foolishness because I didn't get that out of this movie. And I was happy this movie didn't land in that kind of place. This movie landed in a place where we could naturally gravitate and appreciate Michael's contribution to the world, his stardom, see how he became the king of pop and how nobody else could ever contest it. And a lot of it was trauma driven, but the other part was just that he was super talented and God had blessed him to get to this point. So I did though. I had this conversation with my daughter. And she said to me, I'm not going to tell you about this movie because all of the stuff I've been seeing on social media, because I don't want to ruin your experience with the movie. I appreciated that. But I wanted to kind of talk about the main point she told me she was seeing online about this movie and tell you what my thoughts are in either rebuttal or agreement to all of the things they were saying that on social media that she had seen. So the first one was she said that people were saying, the dancing was off. Well, I beg to disagree because, I mean, first off, nobody's going to dance like Michael. This came from inside this man's soul. But secondly, I was so engrossed in the storytelling of it all that I never considered whether or not the dance routines were on point exactly like Michael did them. And it wasn't, if it wasn't off-putting enough for me to be able to call it out because the movie storytelling was that good. And Jaafar had studied Michael so well that if there was something off, it was minute. You really felt like Jaafar Jackson was Michael Jackson after about 30 seconds into this movie. You never considered that he wasn't. So I'm kind of debunking that because I felt like he nailed it. I felt like Jafar nailed all the dance routines. Um, the other thing she said social media was saying was that Michael was way too nice. They try to depict him as being way too nice. But I think that people, especially in this social media age, they will not allow the duality of a person. You're either black or white, there's no middle ground. And I think that's unfortunate because for every good thing that a person does or part of their personality, there's also good and evil that coexist. And for me, I believe Michael was a very kind person, especially if you look up all of the philanthropy that he was involved with and how he was really involved with like sick kids. And he wasn't doing nothing at the hospital to them. You understand that there is full duality, and he probably was very kind and meek because he never really, um, in a way, as far as emotional stability, grew up. Now, he may have been financially savvy. He may have had some financial savvy and work ethic, but emotionally, he probably never grew up. And that childlike mentality, though, kept him humble. And I am happy that this movie and this storytelling lived in that place because I can go someplace else to get the grunge, and I wasn't there for it. The The other thing was, and similar to that, was that they left off a lot of controversy. I'm happy because I didn't come there for controversy. I came there for Mike. And I got what I came for, y'all. It was like a long music video, and I knew every song. Everyone. You gotta be starting. And then when Jafar hit that moonwalk, it was everything. At that point I stopped crying because he got beat, was in the closet getting the belt, and I had to celebrate him because that movie was so nostalgic. It took you everywhere you needed to go emotionally, and then at the end it left you with the cliffhanger because I'm almost overly confident there will be a part two. The other thing that my daughter said she was seeing online and part of the social media conversation was the fact that Nia Long played that Catherine role. And my friend and I discussed that. Nia Long was probably a better Catherine than Catherine Jackson is. Like she had me in there. And what I appreciated about the portion of Nia Long's character is they were also able to show the duality of Catherine Jackson in this movie, which I don't think anybody ever showed. Because there was a part of me who said, I don't know if I like Catherine right now. Because not only I know she was humble and she loved her kids, but she stood by and allowed them to get abused. Like she didn't protect these kids in a way that she should have. But then back to duality, we have to remember that in those times, people didn't get divorces. Like their husbands could have a whole family across town and you were still with them. Lord have mercy. And especially with her crippling debility and those kids, she probably didn't want her family split up. And probably the best protection for them was that she was still there, even though she couldn't herself block a lot of the abuse. Um, and the other portion of the criticism, and this was the last thing that I'll cover for you guys, is that people said they couldn't get enough of Lorenz Tate, and I couldn't either. He was Barry Gordy, and I wish his role would have been bigger. Had his role been bigger, I would have still ate it up. That Lorenz Tate can just walk out on anybody's screen. That dude's just talented. I wish they would have expanded his role and told a little bit more about Barry's relationship with Michael, especially in this context where he is so kind. I would love to see that loving relationship, like that father son kind of relationship that Michael and Barry had. And I think as great an actor as Lorenz Tate is, he could have given us that, and we could have appreciated it a lot more than we did in some of the other movies. So what do y'all think? Have y'all showed up? Did anybody go see Mike Jack? And did I hit the nail on the head? Like, let me see. Uh-oh, sorry. Let me see if there are any comments. Y'all tell me what y'all thought. Did y'all go see Michael Jackson, or did you just sit it out? If you didn't go, are you thinking about going? Like, do you have tickets? Are you do you are you indifferent about it? Do you plan to see it? Do you plan not to see it? Like, what are y'all's thoughts? So in Mississippi, we saw the 11 o'clock matinee. It wasn't that full. Um, and we were able to enjoy the whole movie, although the water wasn't working at the movie theater. That was okay. It ended with a to be continued, so it lets me know that there's probably a part two. I saw on the Breakfast Club, I saw Lauren LaRosa say that it grossed like $214.7 million over the weekend. So absolutely there's going to be a part two. Like, movies are struggling these days. That's a lot for a weekend. And that's a docuseries. And that just proves that people were sick of hearing the disgraceful things that people had to say, a lot of them unfounded, about Michael. And they appreciated being able to see the artistry and without all of the BS, because a lot of those allegations have been unproven. And for me, I'm thinking, as many cameras as Michael had around that place, and we were coming in the social media age, before he passed. If there was really some wrongdoing, y'all would have seen it by now. I think a lot of it was just that Michael was so savvy, and he bought up all those catalogs. He owned so much of that music. I think the powers that be probably would rather he had either been compliant and did what they said and maybe sold those catalogs back, or wasn't as powerful. And I mean, they didn't give a darn about preserving Michael's legacy at all. And leave me a comment even after we go off live. And for now, I just want to tell y'all to keep it hip hop. Thanks, neighbors, for stopping in to see me today.